test different kind of video here today. As you can see, I'm not in the mountains, I'm not in the snow, I'm not hiking. I'm actually sitting down enjoying something that I rarely get up in the mountains. I'm like a plant right now, just soaking up all that beautiful sunlight that's coming over here. All that beautiful sunlight, all of it. As you can see, there's my shadow right there, but it's not just me soaking up the sunlight. All these plants, these trees. They're all taking it in just like I am, trying to enjoy it. Trying to store as much of this solar energy as we can. There's that old cliche, you don't really miss something until it's gone, and people say that about relationships, people say that about people mostly, right? Or a relationship to a certain being. And one thing that I realized is that, man, I've always known I've loved the sun, but goddamn, I'm so at peace right now. So just thankful that I can sit here and just soak up this sun. So day 19, I believe. Today I'm doing something different. Just want to share a little bit of my rough drafts, my writings. Again, I have a whole collection of notebooks like these where I just write. Most of it is rough, extremely rough stuff that I just don't share, but I like to hold on to these notebooks because I had to go back and just see what I've written, because I don't know if other writers or other artists feel this way. Sometimes we can get into a flow state and sometimes you don't get into a flow state. But when I write, sometimes I'll go back and I'll end up surprising myself, going back to some of the stuff that I've already written. And I go, oh shit, I wrote that? I don't remember writing that. And there's sometimes where I look at stuff and I look at it and I'm like, man, I really don't remember writing any of this. I'm shocked at that. Or rather, I should say, I'm surprised that not only did I write this, but I have no recollection of ever writing this. But here it is on my notebook in my penmanship, to signify that, right, I created this, that I wrote this, even though I don't remember. So I don't know if anyone else feels that way or if anyone else has experiences like that. But for me, writing has always been kind of like that. It's like, to write is not a difficult thing. We can write about anything. There's so many different ways that we can write, but to write where it's like, where you get into a flow state of writing, that's a little bit harder. And I think part of what keeps me back or draws me back to writing is that it's the most difficult fucking thing that I've ever done. Physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. And yet I keep coming back to it because it always rewards me. Always. So again, today I'm just gonna do something different, just read something that I have here. Maybe you like it, maybe you won't, but we will see. The whole point is to, like, how I started this challenge. I'm already more than halfway done. Got to go up to 31 videos, and this is number 18, so I got another 3 plus 10, 13 more to go. Yeah, 13 more to go. And the beginning, I struggled. I still struggle being held accountable to these videos, because it doesn't feel natural to me to speak in front of a camera, to take the camera with me, to try to frame shots, because the whole editing process is a whole another fucking different thing that I want to get better at, and I want to get better with the video transitions and just making it a little bit more creative. But again, it's It's not natural, and it's not natural just because I've never done it. And there's one thing that I've learned is just you gotta keep practicing, keep doing it, finding a rhythm, study other people, copy what they do, until you find some that works for you. You think is good enough, or it's cool enough. Writing's the same way. This video fucking thing is the same thing. And it's just, and this is probably a little bit off topic, but something about being natural. I think it was Bruce Lee who probably explained this in the simplest, most elegant way. And he called it that there's 3 stages of learning anything. There's your first stage where it's unconscious and you're incompetent. What does that mean? It means that you're not thinking about it. It's not in your mind, and you're doing something and you're terrible at doing it, and you have no idea that you're terrible at doing it. The second stage of this, or the progression of this evolution, the next stage would be conscious incompetence, and that's where you're aware that you suck at something. You're aware that you're terrible at it, but it's no longer unconscious. Now it's up in your mind, and you're aware of it, so you can notice when you suck at something. And again, that could be anything, right? Public speaking, running, exercising, eating healthy, cooking. It's just, there's so many different things that I think we as human beings don't really appreciate our constraints on these things. Because if we think about how we learn, and again, I'm probably going to have a much deeper understanding of this after my son is born, watching him grow up and how he learns things and how he doesn't learn things, and just the process of all that. Everything that we have now, everything that we've learned, the behaviors, the way we speak to each other, the way we treat people, our relationships, all this shit is learned and copied from other people, and it's either conscious or it's unconscious. And I think for a lot of us, a lot of things that we do and why we do them, it's unconscious. We're in that first stage where we're unconscious and incompetent at what we're doing. And some of us, it's good enough to just get by through life. And there's some of us who are aware of our faults, of our errors, of how inefficient we do things, how bad we are at certain things. I'm no different. I think I'm bad at writing. I think I'm terrible at relationships. I think I'm bad at communicating, sometimes really expressing how I feel about a certain subject. But at least I'm aware of it, right? And if I'm aware of it, then I can try to navigate and try to present things in a different way, or try things a little bit differently, or just being okay with the frustrations that I have with myself and sometimes with other people, because I understand that we're incompetent. And it's not that saying that, because incompetent is such a strong word. It's not that we're completely incompetent, because look at this beautiful civilization that we've created, and this is just a tiny little part of what's around here. But there's skill to everything that's been built around here. The skill, the languages, the coding programs that have allowed me to create a video like this and spread it into the internet, for other people to read and comment on it, for other people to be able to create their own things like this. There's skill involved in all that. And if we were to restart with every generation from day zero, we wouldn't get very far. We'd probably get to a certain level of expertise in a certain field, but then when the next generation stops, we'll start right back at the beginning again. So it's good that a lot of what we learn is from other human beings, because we don't have to always start at ground zero. And it goes back to, again, raising a kid, thinking about how my parents raised me, the stories that they've told me about their childhoods and what their childhoods were like, what their family dynamics were like, what their relationship with their parents were like. Or rather, in my mom's case, she didn't have parents. Her mom died when she was young. Her dad wasn't there, so she was raised by her grandma, who was like 60, 70 something years old. And this woman would get up in the mornings, five in the fucking morning, to go down to the well, go bring water for the whole day for my mom and her sisters, get to the house, make breakfast from scratch for all my sisters, or my sisters, for my mom and her sisters, and do all that with such love and compassion for her grandkids. And to do that at that age, again, when your physical body is supposed to be, at least here in America, if you see most 60, 70-year-old women, including men, it just looks like they're on their way out. But for in Mexico, in a rural area, she had no other choice but to force her body to come with that kind of energy to provide, nurture, and support my mom and her sisters. And again, stuff that my mom learned from her, right? Now she taught me certain things of, one of the biggest things I can credit my mom with is I've learned to copy how compassionate she is, and how she knows how to hold space for somebody without judgment. And again, growing up, you go through that unconscious incompetence stage where you're not aware of what you're doing, just kind of copying what's around you because that's what you know, that's how you survive. But then you become consciously incompetent, and that's where the stage that I'm at now. And I'm sure a lot of other people are aware of their faults, their constraints, things that they'd like to improve and get better at. But you only know you can get better at something if you see another example, if you see another human being that shows you something different, that inspires you, or models a certain thing that you, or a certain quality that you want to take on and have it become part of your being. And again, with my mom, just knowing how compassionate she is and how she can hold space like that for people, like it's motivating and inspiring for me to try to do that for people as well. And again, this is again just a little side rant going to what Bruce Lee said is a third stage. This is like mastery. He called this unconscious competence, meaning now you're no longer aware. It's down to your subconscious. You're not aware of what you're doing, but you're good at it. You're incredibly good at it. And I think that's all the stage of what you would call would be natural. That's where you're natural at something. People say, oh, this person's naturally good at speaking, naturally good at writing, naturally good at playing football, at running, at soccer, at cooking, this, whatever it is. No, it's not that they're naturally good at it. It's just that over time, they've gotten so good at something that's become like second nature. If you think about how we human beings walk, right? How did we learn how to walk? Babies, no one gives a baby a book on how to walk, on how to read, on how to talk. No one gives them a YouTube tutorial on how to do any of those things. So how do babies learn, right? Well, first off, they're crawling on the ground, they're trying to move their bodies, they're still getting used to the feeling of being in that little human body. And then they start developing the central nervous system and the muscles to start connecting, to start moving how they want to move. And how do they move? Well, they watch how other humans are moving. I think if you had a group of babies and they never saw another baby or human being walk, I don't think they would, maybe some would figure it out, but I don't think they would learn how to walk. What do I mean by that? I think a lot of what we do and a lot of the things that have allowed us to create cities and towns and just civilizations on planet Earth, a lot of it has been because we've seen other people do something just a little bit different enough that it motivates us to go try it. Because if you look at babies, they're crawling on the ground. Again, I'm sure I'll have a different experience this once I've actually gone through it with my son and I've watched him go through this, and he starts walking and he starts talking. They're copying what others are doing, and that's a great learning skill, because again, you don't have to start from ground zero. You don't have to figure it out from, imagine Albert Einstein trying to figure out space-time and the laws of gravity, and going through Newton's laws of motion, or the laws of thermodynamics. Imagine he had to start that from ground zero, aka meaning first starting to figure out how the system of counting of arithmetic, and then having to work his way through all of that on his own. It'd be impossible. But luckily, the Greeks, the Arabs, how do I want to call them Arabs, because that sounds kind of un-PC, but in the Middle East, the Islamic scholars, algebra comes from the word, I'm pretty sure it's algebra. I'm pretty sure it's the same word, and that's an Arabic word for the kind of math that they were doing. And again, this was hundreds of years in the making. They started copying and doing what other human beings were doing. Some human beings developed and specialized specifically in that subject and pushed boundaries on what they thought was possible. It's the same thing with watching other people do things that we think are impossible. And as a baby, you see other human beings walking, you see them running, and you want to imitate, and they start doing it, and next thing you know, they're fucking walking and talking, man. Same thing with math, same thing with anything, any skill, anything you can imagine. Engineering, gardening, writing, a lot of what makes something profound. It's not how complex it is, but how simple it is. And how that simplicity and that elegance, like how Bruce Lee stated, those 3 stages of unconscious incompetence, where you don't know what the fuck you're doing and you're not aware of it. Conscious incompetence, where you're aware of how bad you do things, but at least you're aware of it, right? It's in your conscious mind. And then becoming so good at something that's it's now in your unconscious, but you're competent, you're good at something. All of those stages of doing that could be applied to anything in the world. And going back to the earlier point, if I say this doesn't feel natural to me again, it's just that. It's just part of going through the stages, and I understand that. Anyways, ranting. Let me show you or share a little bit of some that I've written. Again, these are rough drafts, so to me this would be considered the conscious incompetent stage of my writing. And again, the beauty of it is once you're aware of something, you're aware of it, you can start getting better at it. And you do that by watching other people who are really good at it. Maybe trying out some of the things that they do, maybe writing in their style or trying to imitate what they're doing, and just little by little getting better and getting better and getting better and getting better and getting better. Till like Bruce Lee, a punch is just a punch. Right, a poem's just a poem, but what they don't understand is the amount of work, the amount of repetitions it took just to be able to create something that seems so natural and so organic and so simple. It's the same thing with nature. Look how many years of evolution it took nature to figure out how to do this kind of stuff. And now we've even modified it, where we're planting certain trees and certain species that otherwise would have never coexisted in the wild on their own. Now we got them all together doing their own thing. Right, so again, it's just nothing happens overnight, and nothing happens by accident. Sometimes those accidents lead to interesting mutations or interesting combination of things that otherwise wouldn't have existed, and maybe it's a positive thing, it could be a negative thing. It could help evolve, or maybe it can't. But the idea of learning, the idea of growing and developing and coordinating with other beings, other entities, other human beings, the relationships and the systems that we've created for each other, how we survive and how we do things out here, how we coexist with each other. None of that's like natural. It's a process to get to the point where it does feel natural. Like right now, man, nothing feels more natural to me right now than just sitting down and enjoying this sun. Even though it's kind of warm out here, doesn't feel unnatural to me. If anything, it feels like I'm like back home. I'm like, man, I'm a simple human being. I'm like one of these plants. Give me some sunlight, some water, and lots of sunlight, and I'm happy. I'm good. All right, so this is my little book of haikus, as you can see. You can see there's a little book of haikus, and again, one of the many journals that I have. And here I just write haikus. Sometimes I'll break the rules and write these little blurbs, but the whole idea of this specific notebook is to write short, direct, to the point, mostly haikus, but again, sometimes it's just short little poems.